Hey everybody, Ms. Smith here, and welcome to the video for our absolute value test review number 1. Let's get started. Actually, one tip, before you get started, make sure you've already tried these on your own and that you've compared your answers with the answer key provided on Canvas. This video is going to be a little bit long, so it's probably a good idea to figure out which problems you missed first and then just kind of zip around through the video to those exact problems so that you don't have to sit here and watch the entire video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started now. We're going to use this little absolute value flowchart for all of our problems. So let's just go over it really quick first. So in step 1, you isolate the absolute value. That's going to be step 1 for every single problem. Now in step 2, you're going to look at what's on the other side of the equal sign. So in other words, if you have the absolute value set equal to a positive number, then you're going to know that you have two solutions and you're going to need to split them, and we'll be doing some of that in just a second. Or you might have the absolute value all by itself set equal to a 0. In that case, you're going to know that there's just one solution. You can drop the absolute value bars and go ahead and solve it. And the third possibility is that the absolute value will be set equal to a negative number, in which case there is no solution. You can stop there and simply write no solution. Okay, so let's get started with number 1. Is our absolute value thing isolated? When we're saying the absolute value thing, I'm talking about this right here. And is it by itself on its side of the equal sign? It is. So we're already isolated. Now we're going to go to step 2. And it looks like 9 is a positive number. And for a positive number, we know there's two solutions. We need to split it. So let's go ahead and split it now. Now, as soon as you do the split, you're going to take whatever's inside of the bars and write it by itself. You do not have to write the bars anymore. They are gone at this point. And then you're going to write equals whatever's there. In this case, it's a 9. Then you're going to do the same thing over here. Take whatever's inside of those absolute value bars, write it down. Then write your equals. But in this case, don't write a 9. Write a negative version of that number. So we're going to have negative 9. And from there, you would solve if you needed to. But as you can see, it's already solved for B. B is already alone. So we've got b equals 9 and b equals negative 9 for that first problem. Let's go on to problem number 2. All right, let's try this. So absolute value of r over 6 equals negative 4. So question 1, is the absolute value already isolated here? And again, this is the absolute value part. It is not isolated because that 6 is over here keeping it company. We need to get rid of that 6. We're going to get rid of it by multiplying by 6 on both sides. When you do that, you're left with the absolute value of r on the left, because that has canceled out, equals negative 24 on the right. Okay, now is the absolute value part isolated? Yes, it is. So we're going to go to step 2. Looks like we need to check whether it's positive, 0, or negative on the other side of the equal sign. And in this case, it is negative, which means no solution. Stop here. So I'm just going to write no solution. And hey, I'm done with that one. Okie dokie, let's keep going. Problem number 3. We've got absolute value of r plus 10 equals 15. First step is to isolate the absolute value part, in which case we need to isolate that. So we need to get rid of the 10 because the 10 is keeping it company over here on the left side of the equation. So let's subtract 10 from both sides. We're going to be left with the absolute value of r equals, let's see, 15 minus 10 is going to give us 5. Okay, now is the absolute value of r isolated? Yeah, it is. It's by itself on its side of the equal sign. So let's figure out what to do next. We need to figure out if the other side, in other words the 5, is it positive, is it 0, or is it negative? Well, you can see it's a positive number, so we're going to have two solutions. That means we have to do the split. So let's split it. And we're going to take whatever's inside here, in this case it's just an r, and we're going to set it equal to, first of all, that number on one side of the split. And then we're going to take what's inside there again and set it equal to the negative version of that number, in this case, negative 5. And from there we would solve if we needed to, but we don't. R is already solved for, so we have our two solutions, r equals 5, r equals negative 5. Okay, let's keep going. Problem number 4. 6 times the absolute value of n equals 24. All right, so again, this is multiplication here. 6 times the absolute value of n. We need to get the absolute value of n by itself, so that means we need to get rid of that 6. Let's do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So we're dividing by 6 on both sides. Those cancel out. you're left with the absolute value of n equals 4. All right, now that the absolute value is isolated, we check on the other side. Is that positive? Is it 0 or is it negative? It looks like it's positive, so we need this one right here. Two solutions, you know that you need to split it, so let's split it. Now we're going to take what's inside here, just the n, you don't need the bars anymore, equals, and then we write that number, which is a 4. We do the same thing over here on the right, take what was inside, write the equals, and then now we do the negative version of that number, so negative 4. We would solve from here, except we don't need to because the n is already by itself, so we have our two solutions. I'm going to go in just a little bit more to zoom. There we go. All right, so we have our two solutions there, and let's go on to number 5. Okay, looking at number 5, we have 8 times the absolute value of v minus 6 equals 120. So we need to isolate the absolute value part, which is the v minus 6 part right here. We know that 8 is multiplying by it right now, so let's get rid of that 8 by doing the opposite of multiplication, which is division. We're going to divide by 8 on both sides. So 8 divided by 8, that's going to go away. And then we're going to go ahead and bring down the absolute value of v minus 6 equals whatever this equals. Let me grab my handy calculator. 120 divided by 8 looks like 15 is what we have over there. Okay, so now is the absolute value part isolated? Yeah, it is. What's on the right-hand side? We have a positive number, so it looks like we need to go with this option here. A positive number means you're going to have two solutions, so we better do that split. Let's go ahead and split now. So for the split, you're going to take whatever's inside here, in this case v minus 6. You do not need the bars anymore. And you set it equal to 15, just like it has up there. For the other side of the split, you take that same v minus 6. And this time we're going to set it equal to negative 15. All right, so in this problem, we're not solved yet for v, so we need to go a little bit further and keep solving for v. We need this v by itself, so let's get rid of the minus 6 by doing plus 6 on both sides. And we're going to have v equals 21. Same thing here, let's do plus 6 on both sides. And you're going to have v equals, let's see, negative 15 plus 6, negative 9. And those are your two solutions. All right, and let's go on to number 6. Okay, so here in number 6 we have 3 times the absolute value of x over 5 equals 6. So again, we need to get the absolute value part by itself. That's this part right here. And we're going to do that by getting rid of the 3. Right now the 3 is multiplying by the rest of this, so we need to get rid of the 3 by doing the opposite, which is division. So let's divide by 3 on both sides. That makes this 3 go away. We're going to bring this down. You still have your absolute value bars at this point. Let's see, 6 divided by 3 is 2. Okay, now is the absolute value part isolated? Yeah, it sure is. And let's look at the other side, the equal sign. We have a positive number. That means we need to do the split because we have two solutions. So let's split it out and take what's inside the absolute value part, which is just the x over 5. This is where we don't need the bars anymore. Set it equal to 2. And then we're going to do the same thing here, x over 5. And this time we're going to set it equal to negative 2. Okay, and now we just solve these two equations. So we're going to solve them separately. First, this one. Let's multiply 3 by the 5 to get rid of that 5. And we're going to get x equals 10. And then over here, we'll multiply 3 by 5 to get rid of that 5. And we're going to get x equals negative 10. And those are our two solutions for that problem. Let's go ahead to number 7. All right, in number 7, we have absolute value of x minus 3 plus 10 equals 9. We need to isolate the absolute value part, so isolate this part inside the circle, right? That means we need to get rid of the 10. So to get rid of a plus 10, let's go minus 10, get it to go to 0. And we're going to do subtract 10 on both sides. Let's bring down the absolute value of x minus 3. We still need those bars. And we know that 9 minus 10 gives us negative 1. Okay, now next step. Is it isolated, the absolute value part? Yeah, the absolute value is isolated. So let's go to step 2 and evaluate what's on the right-hand side here. It looks like we have a negative 1. So let's see what happens when it's negative. Oh yeah, negative means no solution, so we need to stop here. So we're just going to go ahead and write no solution. Make sure you do write no solution. Don't just stop, but you don't need to solve. Let's go on to number 8. Okay, in number 8, we have the absolute value of negative 5 plus b equals 14. Now, is the absolute value part already isolated? Yeah, it is. It's alone over here on its side of the equal sign. So let's go to step 2, which is to evaluate what number is over here on the right-hand side of the equals. It looks like it's a positive number, and when you have a positive number, you know there's going to be 2 solutions, so we better do our split. Let's split it up right now. For the split, take whatever's inside of the bars, in this case negative 5 plus b. You do not need the bars anymore, and you're going to set it equal to whatever's here, so 14. And then on this side of the split, you take the same numbers from the absolute value thing, and you're going to set it equal to negative 14. And from there, you just solve. Let's get rid of the minus 5 by doing plus 5 on both sides. That goes away, and you get b equals 19. You're going to do the same thing over here, get rid of that negative 5, and you're going to get b equals, let's see, what's that going to be, negative 9. So you have 19 and negative 9 for your 2 answers there. Okay, let's go to the next page. Problem number 9. Looks like we have negative 9 plus the absolute value of v plus 7 equals negative 7. Step 1 is to isolate that absolute value part, which is the v plus 7 part. So we better get rid of that minus 9, the negative 9. We're going to get rid of it by adding 9 to both sides. That goes to 0, so it goes away. And now we're left with the absolute value of v plus 7 equals 2. Okay, so now is the absolute value part isolated? Yes, it is. So we're going to look at the other side. It looks like that 2 is a positive number, which means we have 2 solutions and we better split. So let's split it up. So over here on the left, you're going to take what's inside of the absolute value bars, v plus 7, and you're going to set it equal to 2. And then over here on the right-hand side, you're going to take the same v plus 7, but this time you're going to set it equal to negative 2. So this is like the negative version of the answer. Now we just solve. Subtract 7 from both sides. You get v equals negative 5. And then over here, subtract 7 from both sides, and you're going to get v equals negative 9. And those are our 2 answers. All right, we're going to go to number 10 next. All right, in number 10, we have the absolute value of p minus 2 over 2 equals 1. So here, is the absolute value already isolated? Yeah, no, it's not. We need to get rid of that 2, don't we? So right now it's being divided by 2. Let's multiply through by 2 on both sides. So when you multiply through by 2 over here, these 2 cancel out, and you're left just with the absolute value of p minus 2 equals 2. And now is the absolute value isolated? Yeah, it sure is. So let's go ahead and look at the number over here on the right. It looks like that 2 is a positive number. So you know you're going to have 2 solutions, which means you have to do the split. So let's do that split now. P minus 2 equals 2. And p minus 2 equals negative 2. So you're just taking what was inside here, and on one side you're setting it equal to 2, and on the other side you're setting it equal to a negative version of that number, so negative 2. From here we got to solve. Let's add 2 to both sides, and you're going to get p equals 4. Over here you're still going to add 2 to both sides to solve, and you're going to get p equals 0. So those are your 2 solutions there, 4 and 0. All right, let's look at number 11. Okay, in number 11 you have the absolute value of 3r plus 6 equals 12. So is the absolute value isolated yet? Not yet. We still have to get rid of that plus 6 part. We got to get rid of everything else that's keeping it company on its side of the equation. So to get rid of the 6, we're going to go minus 6, and that will go to 0. And we're going to be left with the absolute value of 3r equals 6. Okay, so now it is isolated. Let's look at the number on the other side of the equal sign. It looks like we have a positive number here, which means we're going to have 2 solutions, and we better do the split. So separate it out. We have 3r equals 6. So I just took what was inside of the absolute value bars, and I set it equal to that number here. And at this point, you don't need the absolute value bars anymore. On the other side of the split, you take those same numbers from inside the absolute value bars, but this time you're going to set it equal to negative 6. All right, now you solve each of these equations. Let's solve this one first. 3 times r, let's see, we need to divide by 3, and you get r equals 2. Over here, you still need to divide by 3, and we're going to get r equals negative 2. And those are your two answers, 2 and negative 2. Let's go on to problem number 12. We have the absolute value of n over 8 minus 5 equals negative 4. Okay, so is the absolute value part isolated yet? Nope, it looks like that minus 5 is keeping it company. So let's get rid of that minus 5 by adding 5 to both sides. So now you're left with the absolute value of n over 8 equals, let's see, negative 4 plus 5, that's going to equal 1. So now is it isolated? Yeah, it sure is. Let's look at the other side. We have a positive number, which means, let's see, positive number means you're going to have two solutions and you need to split. So split it up. You get n over 8 equals 1. So you just take what's inside here. You write it without the absolute value bars. And then you take whatever number's there and you write it there. And then for the other side, you take the same numbers, but this time you're going to make this one a negative. All right, so let's go ahead and solve these. To get rid of that 8, let's multiply through by 8. That goes away, and you're left with n equals 8. You're going to use the same process on this side. Multiply through by 8 on both sides. That 8 goes away, and you're left with n equals negative 8. So your two solutions are 8 and negative 8. All right, let's look at number 13. We're getting there. In number 13, you have the absolute value of 6 minus 4r equals 0. So step 1, isolate that absolute value part. Is it already isolated? Yeah, it is. There's nothing else on its side of the equal sign keeping it company. So look at the number on the other side of the equal sign. We have a 0. So come over here, let's see, 0. Ah, yeah, that means one solution. So what we do is we go ahead and we solve it. So at this point, you can drop the absolute value bars. I'm just going to copy down my problem here exactly like it was, but no need for absolute value bars. That's a 0 there. And then from there, I just solve. So let's get rid of the 6 first by subtracting it from both sides. And you have negative 4r equals negative 6. Now at this point, don't worry about these negative numbers because the absolute value bars are gone. You definitely know you have a solution, so make sure you keep going. And let's get rid of the negative 4, divide by negative 4. And you're going to be left with r equals, let's see, 6 over 4. Let's just use calculator. 6 divided by 4 is 1.5. And if you got r equals 6 over 4, which equals 3 over 2, that's perfectly fine also. Decimal or fraction, as long as it's simplified, you're all good to go. And so that's it for this one. Let's go on to number 14. Okay, now we have the absolute value of 6 minus 4r equals 14. So is the absolute value part isolated? Yeah, it is. So let's go ahead and look at that number on the other side of the equal sign. Is it a positive number? Yeah, it's positive. So that means we've got those two solutions and we need to do the split. So let's go ahead and do that now. Split it up. And you're going to take whatever was inside of the absolute value bars, 6 minus 4r in this case, and set it equal to that, equals 14. For the other side, you're going to take the same numbers from inside the absolute value bars. Don't change them at all. But you got to take the number from the other side of the equal sign and make it negative. And then once you have that written out, you can just go ahead and solve them individually. So let's solve this one first. Let's get rid of the 6 first by subtracting it from both sides. You get negative 4r equals, let's see, that's going to be equal to 8. Now divide by both sides by negative 4, and you're going to get r equals negative 2. On the other side, let's go ahead and subtract the 6 away. We're going to get negative 4r equals negative 20. And now divide by the negative 4 on both sides, and you're going to get r equals 5. So negative 2 and 5 are our two solutions there. All right, guys, 2 problems left. Let's look at number 15. So in 15, we have the absolute value of negative 3m minus 3 over 9, and that equals negative 5. So is the absolute value part isolated yet? No, it's not. You've got that 9 keeping it company. So let's get rid of that 9. We're going to do that by multiplying through by 9 on both sides. That cancels out. You're going to be left with the absolute value of negative 3m minus 3 equals Let's see, negative 5 times 9 is negative 45. All right, now is the absolute value part isolated? Yeah, it sure is. That means we can look at the number over here. It looks like we have a negative 45. What does that mean? Let's see, the negative 1 is over here. Oh yeah, negative, that means no solution. And we should stop. Just go ahead and write no solution. You don't have to solve it any farther. Okay, and one more problem, number 16. You have the absolute value of negative 10x minus 5 minus 6 equals negative 6. All right, so don't worry about this number being negative yet. Make sure you isolate the absolute value part first. And in order to isolate it, we're going to have to add 6 to both sides. Get rid of that in minus 6. So that goes to 0. We can cross it out. Don't cross out this one because then you would have nothing on the right-hand side. Make sure you go ahead and write the 0 over here because negative 6 plus 6 is 0. We're going to bring down this absolute value here. Negative 10x minus 5. There we go. Okay, so now is the absolute value part isolated? Yeah, it sure is. What is it equal to? It's equal to 0. So when it's equal to 0, it means there's just one solution and you can go ahead and solve it. So you can get rid of the absolute value bars. I'm going to just cross mine out very gently. And then I'm going to solve. So let's get rid of the 5 first by adding 5 to both sides. That goes away. You're left with negative 10x equals 5. And now divide through by that negative 10 on both sides because you got to get rid of that. And you're going to get x equals, looks like negative 1/2. Or if you got negative 0.5, that's perfectly fine as well. Either way, let me move that so you can actually see it. So either one of those answers is correct. I'm just going to go ahead and circle that one. And you are done with your review. Awesome work. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, just let one of your teachers know.